Welcome to It's a New Day. My name is James Young. Today my guest is?
Carvin-YouTube.
Will you give us a little history? First I want to ask you, are you originally from Rochester?
I am not from Rochester.
Where are you
I'm originally from Buffalo, New York.
Well, how long have you been here?
I've been in Rochester since I was maybe 20 years old.
Okay, so that's good enough. We'll give it.
So I'm from Rochester
exactly.
for all intents and purposes.
I know that you are a professor out at Brockport. Would you explain to the viewing audience what it is that you do out there?
I have the great good fortune of working for the State University of New York, where I am an associate professor at the college at Brockport, associate professor in communication. And I teach all kinds of communication courses similar to what people are doing in the studio today. How to operate in a studio, running cameras, sound, directing, etc. I teach also writing for radio and television, broadcast ethics, live television production courses that are actually taught here at the station for the college, and a range of other writing and courses around the media, talking about contemporary media issues and a full range of courses. I try to excite my students about engaging in their culture, engaging in their democracy through the use of media.
We're going to switch, because I know that you wear a couple of hats, we're going to switch into another hat, and now we're going to talk to Carvin-YouTube, the director, the filmmaker. Tell us about your movies.
I have also the great good fortune of making, most recently, documentary films that are about subjects that I'm interested in. And most recently, I have, in the last 10 years, I have two films, one called July '64, The Roots of Urban Unrest, where Chris Christopher and I examined the so-called Rochester riots, which they're really not riots. They were rebellions, disturbances based on a history of repression, lack of opportunity, and there was a trigger mechanism that caused things to go off. So we made a film about that. It's been in steady demand. As recently as last week, I had a request to participate in a screening at the University of Rochester. This film really touched a nerve in Rochester because it's the first time that someone attempted to put in a linear sequence the events that took place and the causes of that event, right? And usually every 5 years or so, the newspaper will do a sort of, I call it a hysterical review of the salient issues. Whenever there's violence, that's going to sell newspapers, so they concentrate on those kind of issues. But we really actually attempted to look at the cause and the effect of what actually took place. And in that sense, it has done extremely well, better than I could have ever imagined. Okay. It's in hundreds of universities across the country, and universities, community centers, churches, civic engagement organizations. So we're really excited about that. That's an ongoing project, and in fact, it is almost time, I believe. I'm trying to generate some interest in re-examining, revisiting the issues around July '64 from the perspective of today's youth. That project is going on. My most recent film that is very, very difficult film for people to deal with is called Shadows of the Lynching Tree, and it is a film that examines the phenomenon of lynching that took place in the United States for way, way too long. That it happened at all is overwhelming, but that it took place for the best part of 100 years is remarkable, and that there is still no discussion about that in its totality and in its significance in terms of how it helped to shape the social landscape that we exist in right now. So that's been an overwhelming project and a difficult project. Difficult because whenever you say the word lynching, right, you send people to their corners.
Exactly.
Right? As soon as you bring that concept up, Americans have really little tolerance for even addressing the concept. We know much more about the atrocities of Central Europe and World War II and Nazi Germany. We know everything that happened there and the Holocaust. We know a great deal about what happened between in World War II in concentration camps and how certain elements in Germany were trying to exterminate a group of people. We know the ins and outs about that. Almost no Americans now living know anything about this, what I call the slow motion Holocaust that took place in the United States between roughly the late 1800s and up into the 60s. The idea that one group of people could use murder and burning and dismemberment and psychological terror, because that's really what it was, on another group of people with impunity, with the support of the government, with the support of the church, and promoted in the media. And I think those three issues are so distasteful and so reprehensible that people, contemporary people, just don't want to go there. They don't want to believe that that happened in this country. But the fact is that it did happen. And it is my belief that until we let that rise to the surface and give that clear articulation and acknowledge that this happened, right, that we're doomed to never be away from, never be out from under the shadow of its influence.
I, for one, can particularly appreciate exactly what you're saying, which is going to segue me into the next phase of our discussion. But before we go there, the next thing that we're coming back to that because there are things that I want to add on to that. Mm-hmm. But I would like to now talk to you or talk to the audience about your third hat and being the general manager of this station.
Well, I'm so fortunate, aren't I? I have a sort of magical life that I'm very thankful for and that I'm very proud of, and that I also worked very hard. Nobody said, here, do this. It's like my desire and my seriousness in terms of connecting all these things together is what gives me this opportunity, and I'm very thankful for it. And when the day comes that I'm no longer effective, I want somebody else to take responsibility for these things. But that's not going to happen right now because I'm still going to try to be very effective because all of these things are extremely important. I am very honored to be the general manager of Rochester Community Television, and I can't even believe that sometimes I pinch myself because it is a position with a great deal of responsibility, attempting to provide high quality, relatively low cost equipment and instruction for regular people just like us to help them become part of the conversation. And if you know anything about the contemporary conversation, you cannot participate in this democracy if you don't have some control of, some understanding of this very powerful tool known as the media, the messaging enterprise, the messaging environment where messages are created by individuals and corporations for the purpose of influencing your behavior. Go to this place, don't go to that place. Be with this person, don't be with that person. Go to this school, don't go to that school, exactly. Right? Buy this thing, don't buy that thing. Vote for this person, don't vote for this person, right? We're in a battle royale right now. And without this, without Rochester Community Television and community organizations such as this all across the country, we run the risk of turning into a state, an environment, a culture controlled by media interests, right? What do you call it when business is in charge of a government? Plutocracy. I think that's the word, plutocracy. We run the risk of moving from a democracy to a plutocracy, and we're dangerously close to that right now.
And that brings me now back into the relation and how closely the documentary that you're talking about lynching. Because if we didn't have this vehicle, if we didn't have the means to be able to express this, because perhaps Hollywood, major networks would never be able to look at this topic of lynching and the things that happen. And now here we have the ability to be able to speak this from our point of view.
Well, this is one of the primary beauties and major values of community television, in the sense that you can, and the people that are in the studio now that you work with regularly, and anybody really, if it is their desire, they can participate fully in communicating in the marketplace of ideas about the things that they're concerned about. So if there's an idea that you think is important and it's not on the air, you can explore that idea, and with very minimal investment as far as financial investment, you can use this public asset, this community public asset access facility to express those ideas. And that is so critically important to a democracy. And I encourage people to explore the thoughts, the beliefs, the ideas, the issues that are important to them. And I say that not just because I'm just saying, oh, do that. I'm saying that because, in fact, that's what I do. I made a film that I wanted to make. Not that somebody was saying, go make this film, because the truth is, people are saying, don't make this film. Nobody wants to see this film. And it is awful. It is awful if you, to me, a documentary film has two major components. One is the search for the truth, right? I think that no documentary, the thing that separates documentary from fiction film is the idea that you're searching for the truth, the empirical truth, the truth that cannot be disputed. You're in search of that truth, whatever it is. And the second thing that if without this evidence, without this component, the search for the truth is an exercise. But when you have evidence, right, visual evidence that cannot be disputed and supports the search for the truth, then you have a powerful vehicle. And I fortunately, for me, fortunately, those are my concerns, and that's what I'm interested in. And I don't care if my grandmother said, don't do this. I'm going to do it because it's just in me to do it that way. Nobody may want to see it. Sometimes we will make things and people are just not interested in it. But I'm well beyond that. If that's what I want to make, if that's what I want to see, I can't believe that I would work on something for 8 years and it has absolutely no value. It is more difficult because certain things are not popular to talk about, right? Everybody is looking to make this big score because that score is going to translate into dollars and cents and you're going to be wealthy and all that. And there's a place for that. There's no doubt a place for that. But sometimes we have to do things that are not popular. James Baldwin and many other writers, Richard Wright and James Faulkner and hundreds of other artists, right? They explored this issue of lynching. And if you go look through the literature, you can find all sorts of reactions to this period of time in American history. And it's in books, and it's in manuscripts, and in music scores, but it's not circulating. It did at a time, but it's not available for the general. It is available, but generally people are just not interested in seeing that. So I wanted to explore that.
The purpose of me emphasizing this is because I also want the viewing audience to understand that we have a vehicle here. I'm not sure about other places in the country, but we here in Rochester have a vehicle for us to voice our opinions, for us to disseminate our views. I mentioned to you off camera, wouldn't this have been a wonderful thing during the civil rights movement if we had a television station where we controlled the output that was coming from that? I believe we would have been so much further along, which now brings me up to 2005. I read an article that you did in 2005, and basically it is talking about the very things that we're talking about now, being able to establish a vehicle that the community would be able to tune into, support with its viewership, knowing that here's a place that whatever it is that you want to find out, whatever it is that you want to know, or we are producing things that you need to know, that here's a vehicle for you. I'd like for you to also to go back in and talk a little bit more, because I would like people to understand the service that is being provided here. I myself happen to find out that you do these classes, and at the end of the class, once you complete it, you're able to do a show. So that gives you an opportunity to be able to voice whatever it is that you want to voice, I would assume within reason. Talk about that and how all of that works.
Well, technically speaking, community access television, in terms of public access, government access, and educational access, exists because of a relatively recent Communication Act, which said that companies like Time Warner and the big cable companies, there are fewer and fewer of them now, Comcast, Time Warner, and I forget the names of some of the others, but they're very few now. Those companies, it was determined, when they come into a community, that they have the ability to make so much money, right? The government wanted there to be a return back to the community, to give something back in exchange for Time Warner, for example, to have the ability to use the rights of way, the ability to use to string line, to run cables, to dig ditches, right? So they're going to use the common ways, the common good, the common land, the common assets to make money for their individual corporation. So the idea was that these corporations, then this corporation would give back to the community 3 channels, a government access channel, right, which is channel 12 in this community, that is housed at WXXI, channel 15, which is community access, public access through Rochester Community Television, 15, it's a great shirt that I have on today, and hat, and channel 4, which is the educational access channel, which is currently housed at the college at Brockport. So these 3 channels are available in every community across the country. They're supposed to be available in every community across the country. And these 3 channels, what they do, what by design, is put powerful tools of communication into the hands of regular people, right? Doctors and dentists and plumbers and teachers and the like, to give them the opportunity to put a message on television, broadcast television, that is relevant to them and the community that they exist in. And that is how this happens. And for a long time, it was a kind of quiet, secret, not very well known by the general public, that this facility and that these opportunities were available. When I came as general manager here in 2003, we decided that we were going to try to blow it up. We're going to try to make it large. We're going to try to run this facility like a commercial facility. And that has a lot of challenges, especially in this environment, because the one thing that we're leaving out when it comes to modern media is the extraordinary amount of money that changes hands to put a message on the air, whether it's broadcast or whether it's on broadcast television or broadcast radio in a commercial sphere, or whether it is in a newspaper. It's a tremendous amount of money that is exchanged in order for a person to get, a corporation, an individual to get a message on the air. Now, with respect to commercial stations, you could have a great message. Let's say you have a great message about sexual health or lung cancer or whatever the message is, smoking, whatever. You cannot, as valuable as that message is and as important as that message is to the community, you cannot put that message on the air unless you have a certain amount of dollars. The message is just not going to get on the air. And the more money that you have, the more likely you are to have that message seen by more and more people because you can pay for those time slots. It's important for people to understand that the programs are the least significant aspect of the equation. What's really important in a broadcast environment is the spaces between the programs, the ad revenue, the messages from Prudential Bache and Kodak and RJR, Nabisco, and millions of other corporations, Bain Capital, millions of other corporations that want to deliver a message to a specific audience. So in our dynamic, in our equation, as far as community television, all of the money is taken out of the equation. You don't have to have money to put your show on the air, right? You can put a show on the air. The challenge becomes, right, who's going to know about your show? Who's going to participate in your show? Who is your audience for your show? This is the great divide or the great confusion, the great potential confusion that we have in relative to this enterprise, because it happens in many ways in a vacuum. But there are ways to address that. There are things that you can do now that you couldn't do before. You can do underwriting, similar to the PBS model, the WXXI model, the Go Public model, the underwriting model that this program is brought to you by Dorschel Lexus, right? They don't say go buy the Dorschel Lexus, but they say brought to you by Lexus. Lexus serving the community of Rochester and Rochester Community Television for 35 years or whatever, right? So you know what to do. And so then if Dorschel or whoever the company is interested in your show, then you could take a little bit of revenue from them to help make your show, pay for your time, pay for inventory, commercial messages that you may produce for them, or underwriting messages that you may produce for them that go on your show. So it's incredibly interesting and incredibly dynamic, and it's under a lot of pressure because the environment has changed, right? More and more eyeballs now, particularly young eyeballs, are not in broadcasts. They are on the internet. So it's very wise for you to put your show, on YouTube and on various other social media venues, because that's where the audience is. But they still have not figured out a way to generate massive amounts of ad revenue yet from those modern social media landscapes. So this is going to be the big challenge. And as we're talking, I mean, even the great Zuckerberg and Facebook, we've steadily watched his net worth descend, since the rollout of their IPO on Facebook. It's just a very complicated environment. But broadcast is still a very viable, very significant way of reaching people, right? And we know that even our little RCTV 15, which is between right after channel 13 on the dial and just before on basic cable, right on, I like to make this analogy that it's upscale, that our station was originally a rundown property in an upscale neighborhood, right? So just the fact that you're on there puts you in a great neighborhood. And so we're trying to bring our property values up and make our signal much more attractive, make our offerings much more attractive. We have a whole new idea that we want to roll out in the fall, programs produced by Rochester Community Television that emphasize the kind of things that we're talking about, that talk about social justice issues, that talk about health issues, employment issues, educational issues, all of the most important things that contribute to the vibrancy of a community.
Along with that, I would like to be able to also include us being able to produce, if nothing else, maybe 3-5 nights a week news, because the news that we receive isn't news that we are producing, and we're getting news from someone that views us totally different. Whereas perhaps maybe what you and I would consider news and what this community would consider news, we don't see.
You're absolutely right. And the news, the most important thing to understand about the news is that it's an industry and it's a business like any other business.
Yes.
And that they know that the bottom line is to put something on the air that is going to create a reaction in the viewers who are looking at the station. So it often doesn't have anything to do with reality. It has to do with confirming or reinforcing what people already believe. So when they talk about the city, there's a perception about the city that has been carefully cultivated over generations, and that cultivation, that perception has to do with a certain set of ideas, that it's violent, that it's dangerous, that you risk your life if you go into the city, if you go into certain neighborhoods of the city. You and I know that there's so much more to this city than those ideas that I just expressed. And we also know that those same ideas that I just expressed are just as prevalent in other communities, in Parrington and Victor and Canandaigua and every other satellite community around the city. Those are the issues in modern times. But for some reason, right, those ideas are perceived to be much more volatile and much more dangerous in an urban environment. Now, saying that, crossing over to the other side of the equation, and I think it's very important to look at both sides, the murder rate in the city is ridiculous, right? The murder rate in the community that we're talking about, the community that this station sits in and is a part of, is hydraulic, is dangerous, it's complicated, but you cannot separate these ideas. You cannot separate the faulty positioning and the faulty workings of education, right, and make a disconnection to that from the values that are on the street, the drug culture, the gang culture, right? So you just can't separate those things and say that there's no correlation. So it's really important. I think it's really, really, really important for people to become engaged, right? To know that this facility exists and to become a part of it, right? As we're having this conversation tomorrow, we're having Black Music Month celebration, right? There's going to be hopefully lots of people here. We're going to have a live concert going on for several hours during the day. This is all, to me, reflecting the vitality and the vibrance of this community, and that's what we have to promote. The news media, the commercial news media, is going to telegraph, and they're going to shorthand, and they're going to communicate. You know, I know when I'm watching the news and it says so-and-so committed a crime at 2 o'clock in the morning, wherever, right? I know I'm going to see a picture of that person, and I know what that person is most likely going to look like, right? But when so-and-so commits a crime in a suburban community, right, we're never going to see that picture. Rarely do we ever see the mugshot of that person. We might see a shot of the outside of the house, or the car, or the street on which the alleged crime took place, but you don't see the mugshot. So how is it that they can get one mugshot, but they can't get the other? How is it that these things are constructed in the way that they are? So, we can't go against that. I mean, you can go against it, you can resist against it, but the best way to resist it is by creating vehicles, creating message and message opportunities that go against that, right? That show another dynamic of that environment.
Would you also perhaps maybe discuss how we also need the buy-in for the community to really look at what's going on here, how we need their support, how we need them to start viewing the different things that we're putting on here. Because I believe what has happened with, for instance, the local news is that we've bought into that. Because the local news is propagating that it's dangerous to walk in certain neighborhoods, we actually believe that it's dangerous to walk in these neighborhoods. And it isn't until we walk in these neighborhoods that we find out that they're not dangerous. So when we are able to report a different perspective, we also need the community to be supporting us by viewing us, looking at this, and being able to use this as a well for information.
I think you're absolutely right, James. And there's this old saying, I heard it on TV. I hear so much stuff on TV, but if you build it, they will come,
Yeah.
right? I really believe that if you provide substantial, authentic, quality information, people are interested in that, and people will participate in that. And it has always been our motto to get involved in your community, to take time. In television, the whole broadcast environment, media environment is so overwhelmingly able to control how people perceive the world. That's really what it's about. People who watch Fox 7 hours a day, they have a frame about the world that's based on what Fox presents. And Fox doesn't present a very healthy, from my perspective, a very healthy point of view about this culture that we live in. If you had, on the other side of the coin, you have people that watch MSNBC, several hours a week, a day. They have a skewed perception of what the world is about, right? If you only take it from the perspective of that venue. But I tend to prefer their skew more than I do Fox's skew. But that's my own personal, point of view. But the idea is that in a media landscape, there's so much information, right? And so many people, so many companies, so many businesses are vying for the control of your eyes, right, and your ears. They want you to listen to what they have to say. They want you to participate. They want you to do what they want you to do, which is generally separating you from the contents of your wallet or your bank account. So we have to create media literate people, right? And that's one of the primary missions of community television is to create media literate people. People who can function in front of the camera and behind the camera. In front of the camera in the sense that you deliver a message, you craft a message, and then you find the best way to deliver that message to a constituency. Behind the camera in the sense that you have to be able to know how, right, to edit, to shoot, to write, to develop all sorts of information. And it also happens on another level, to encode and decode, right? To understand the billions, and I mean billions of dollars that are used to construct messages. They're projecting that there is going through Citizens United, the Supreme Court's decision to allow as much money in American politics that there has ever been in the history of American politics, that 80 billionaires are going to have more influence over the amount of money in this election than the rest of the country, right? So this is serious stuff, the amount of money that is available at any given time to influence what people are receiving. People have to be able to cut through that and decode that because companies will use techniques, right? They will present something as a news program when in fact it's a commercial program, but they use the trapping of news and people say, oh, it's news, I better pay attention, right? It's nothing more than AstroTurf. It's just set up to look a certain way. And through the skillful understanding of how media is presented to you you being able to break that down and decode it, you know that you're being sold something. So encoding and decoding. Encoding in the sense that we are producers, but decoding in the sense that people learn to discern and make a difference between what they're being told, and that what's being presented to them has an agenda, a very specific agenda, and it's usually, that agenda is usually to control your behavior.
I'm very impressed with you, as you know. I like what you're saying. Have you gone out into the community, done speaking engagements, so we can really get the community to understand the value of this station and what it is that we're attempting to do? Because to a degree, we're the David against the Goliath. We've got this little slingshot of a station here, but we can wield this thing if we wield it right. Do you go out and speak?
Oh yeah, I've had a very fortunate opportunity, very fortunate career in the sense that I'm able to. These are the things that I talk about to anybody that'll listen. Or people get tired of talking to me because they know I'm going to say the same thing over and over. Here comes Carvin, there he goes again, you know. But what we do is that we have here at the station, in addition to our adult classes that you guys have participated in, we have any number of youth initiatives where we are teaching young people to do the very same things that we're talking about, to encode information and decode information, to function in front of a camera and function behind the camera. Because anytime I talk to my wife about this all the time, she'll say, we're watching a movie, and she'll say, why did they do that? Why did they kill that person? You know, why is the black character the first one to be killed in the movie, right? It's like, it's the triumph of the script writer. The person who writes the script determines what happens to the characters. So if we teach young people to write their own scripts instead of living out the scripts of other people, right, in every facet of their life. So to be the producer as opposed to be the receiver all the time. So we try to talk about this, and we have a number of youth programs that I mentioned earlier that are engaged in messaging, public health messaging, sexual health messaging, health around heart, lung, social justice issues around, of course, education. And we're, you know, just trying to put powerful tools and education in the hands of the people who most normally don't even get it. They don't see it that way. They're on the wrong side of the divide, you know, on the side that doesn't have the information, on the side that is constantly digesting information but has little foundation on which to negotiate through that information and discern that information and know when something is being presented as red when it's actually blue, right? And this is the beauty of television. You could say anything, and if you say it long enough and loud enough, you can say, well, this curtain that's behind us is white. And people will say, oh, I guess it is white. They said it was white, you know? So it's complicated, but, you know, we try to get out. We have a very full itinerary of things that we're trying to do. But people are understanding it, and come take a class. You know, my message to you would be, and I'm sure you're doing this based on the shows of yours that I've seen in the past. Participate, right? If something is going wrong, and you just can't sit back and say, oh, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? No, why don't you do it? Why don't you get involved? Why don't you get, you know, with like-minded people and change this, as opposed to, oh, you know, why doesn't somebody else do it? You know, get off your own, get it out from off your own couch, out from in front of your own TV, and go and do something.
But I think that is part of the message that I believe that we can generate from this station. I believe that just as one picture has been painted, I believe that we have the ability. Now, it may take us a little bit longer to draw our picture due to the billions of dollars of revenue that we aren't generating and being able to have immediate access. But I believe that if we continue to stay at that easel, to continue to stay at that portrait and paint the picture that we believe that is best for this community or is the most conducive for this community, I believe that we have a shot because I believe that we're doing it. We may not be able to compete maybe with the billions of dollars in advertising, but I believe content for content, especially for what our community needs, I think that we've got a good chance at this.
Well, I'm come at it from this perspective. I want to invent the things that I don't see. I wanted to know when I discovered the idea about lynching, I was 50 years old, and I'm 60 now. I was 52 years old, and I discovered this in Poland, in Warsaw, Poland. Someone was doing a presentation on the lynching photographs, James Allen's photographs from Without Sanctuary, lynching photography in America. And to make a long story short, I didn't see the presentation because it was at a part of town and I didn't get to. By the time I got there, it was over. But that idea stuck in my head. And when I came back, I started looking for what I could find about this subject because there's not a lot of information out there. When people think of lynching, they think of the Oxbow incident and the Wild Wild West and summary justice, mob justice for cattle rustling or horse theft or something like that. So they're just going to exact some justice right there on the spot because, you know, it's a prairie town sort of thing. What I found out is that it's way deeper than that. It's way deeper than that. That has nothing to do with it. That this was a tool that was used to terrorize people. And I felt like, how come I don't know that? How come I didn't know that? How come that wasn't taught in schools? How come I am just learning about this at this age of my life? And I remembered that my grandmother in her own home, right? I'm a 7-year-old, 8-year-old boy I saw a picture of Emmett Till in a magazine. And I said to my grandmother, what is this? And my grandmother in her own home looked at me. She looked this way. She looked this way. And she said, honey, we don't talk about those kind of things. So this is toxic. This is deeply seated, embedded in the psyche of American culture. So what I wanted to do is that I wanted to give some air, some light to that. I wanted to expose that. I wanted to take ownership of that. And that's really the issue, is taking ownership. This is why the message of the Holocaust is so powerful. The Jewish community has taken ownership of that part, that history that they lived through and that they shared. And they've taken ownership of that, and they control that message, and they make sure that successive generations know that this happened, right? We don't have ownership of lynching in America. We have a kind of fear and a kind of repulsion about that imagery. And I felt like, I'm taking ownership of this, right? This is what shaped these things that happen in these photographs, right? This shaped the contemporary social DNA around the issue of race. It shaped it. We are the beneficiaries of what happened at that time. We are living them out now. So when you have this extraordinary resistance to an incredible President Barack Obama, when you have this deep-seated resistance that he is not one of us, that he wasn't born here, that he is a Muslim, which, so what if he was a Muslim, that he is the other person, that is so deeply rooted in the American experience about race, that he cannot be the leader, right? He can be a public leader, but he certainly can't be a business leader, right? And that is so deeply intertwined into the DNA of this country that unless we go back there, from my perspective, and we acknowledge and we deal with that, right? What happened when 15,000 men and 15,000 people from the community closed their farms, closed their shops, brought their children to participate in the killing of a human being for no other reason other than the fact that that person was black and most likely male, right? Until we deal with that, right, we will never understand where all of this resistance, and it's not everyone, I want to be clear about that. It's not painting the whole country with one brush, because it's not that, but it's enough of a vocal group of people who feel that way in their heart that he cannot lead us, right? He has no interest in what our interests are, that even the good things that he does can never be seen, they can never be acknowledged, right? So this is, I just feel to take ownership of that. And so my message there for everybody is to take ownership of it. Take ownership of your community. We could stop this issue of violence and homicides in this city. If this was the goal of the community, it could be stopped, right? But it has to be the will. The people have to have the will to want to stop it. But, you know, people get comfortable, and there's so much complication in the lives of people living out, trying to put food on their table and clothes on their children's back and provide a home and a roof over their head. We get caught up in the basic living, the essential things, as opposed to thinking, you know, when you have all of those problems resolved, when you're not living on subsistence, you have more time to think about the greater good of the community, and we just unfortunately are not there yet.
And I agree with you until we take ownership of this. But I believe what prevents us from taking ownership in this is that we bought into this, and somehow we're looking at this from the third person. Somehow we don't believe that this is us.
Yeah.
But the reality is because we bought into this nonsense of violence. We bought into this nonsense of drug addiction. We are now buying into that education isn't valid anymore.
When I hear that, when I hear some kid tell me, and I've heard this from kids, and it gets me very angry, education, oh, that's a white thing, right? It's like, do you know how many people died so you could stand there and say education is a white thing? You don't even have any clue of what you're talking about. I have the right to fail, right? My son told me that. I have the right to fail, right? I'm driving down the street and I'm bang! You know, you have the right to fail, but you're not going to fail here. Mm-hmm. You know, when you leave here, if you choose to fail, it won't be because you didn't get the information, right? It won't be because you weren't told, weren't provided the opportunity to succeed. If you choose to fail, that will be your desire, but it's not because you don't have the skill. So just this community that we live in. What I learned from making July 64, The Roots of Urban Unrest, is that there are so many components that go into making up a city, that go into making up a community that is viable, that we have to take ownership of that, right? If just this neighborhood, right, this neighborhood still, while things are significantly improved, there's a lot more vitality in some ways than there was in the past. Minister Florence said, the leader of FIGHT and the person who most responsible in this town for breaking down the doors at Eastman Kodak to provide jobs for people, for people of African descent in this community, Minister Florence said that the problems in the middle part of the 20th century were health, education, and employment. And at the infancy, essentially, of the 21st century in Rochester, it's the same set of problems: health, education, and employment. So until we as a community take the responsibility for what that means, right? The responsibility for the physical structure, the physical look, the environment that we live in, right? Then those problems just get pushed out, just get pushed down to the next generation to deal with. So I think we, you know, the idea of getting involved, the idea of taking responsibility, right? Not letting somebody else do it, right? Waiting for somebody else to do it, but the idea that each and every one takes responsibility, right, for the environment around them. We could maybe see some change.
Well, just what you said gives us the validity of being here, because I look at that's what our job is to do. I believe that it is our responsibility to provide this community, whether they wanted it or not.
Well,
But
you
for us
got to
to-
bring
but-
people
but-
along.
for us to be able to provide it to them.
Yeah.
And I believe if we provide it to them in such a manner, and I also believe that we're really getting pushed to the wall now. And I believe that a station of this structure is going to be able to turn some of this stuff around, because, I mean, we're almost the last hope, if you will. We are the Dr. King of this station. Is the mentality of a Dr. King or a Push or those particular organizations, because we are now at the crossroads that if we don't start really utilizing and taking full advantage of what we have, because just as you said, the internet with its vastness, but yet look what it's become. It's become another giant entertainment system.
Yeah, it's for shopping.
Exactly.
It's for shopping and porn, you know. But that's those are the two most prominent uses of the internet, for shopping and for pornography. But you know, it is the responsibility of people to assess their circumstances and then to look to improve their circumstances, right? And it's always been for each successive generation to improve over what the previous generation did. This is historically, this is the way it's been, right? We're at a time now where the next generation, it is looking like they're not going forward in the same way that previous generations have gone forward. If anything, it's sort of slowing down and they're going backwards. And this is complicated because it's more than just we're sort of like, our communities are sort of like the canary in the cage, right? They put the canary in the coal mine to see if there's any toxicity in there, and if the canary dies, well, then they know there's some problems. Our community has always been the canary in the coal mine when it came to drugs in the community, right? Before drugs was the pandemic that it has become in America, when it was only contained in a small group, black communities. I remember that famous line in The Godfather when they say, keep it in their community, don't bring it up here, we'll keep the drugs in their community, and they use words that I'm not gonna use now to explain that, right? So then as we evolve now to where we are, now drugs are a big problem across the country. Teen pregnancy, when it was only a small issue in the black community, right? Then it was a problem and it wasn't going to be a big issue. Now teen pregnancy is a global problem, right? Obesity, right? When it was a problem as a result of poor nutrition and it was confined in a small group, right? Now it's a problem globally. So we have always been the canary in the coal mine, and it is our responsibility. I mean, if you this word minority, this is one that I just still have a problem with, and I just will always have a problem with this word because I never have perceived myself as a minority, and I never will, right? But as soon as you take on the concept that you are a minority, as soon as you adopt that and you ingest that, you're finished, because you will accept a minority status. And that means you will accept less than what is good for the majority. You will accept your allocation. You will accept the small amount that is eked out to sustain you, as opposed to the vast amount that goes to the dominant culture. But that's changing. It's changing in a way. It's changing as far as birth rates are concerned. Birth rates in America for non-white Americans is now eclipsing and exceeding the birth rates of white Americans. Now, this presents an interesting opportunity, right? But correspondingly, will the means of control of the culture change accordingly? This is going to be the battle line of the future, right? Because I won't say that it will or say that it won't, but I will say that what are the actions that promote the greatest good, right? What actions should a culture take? The actions that promote the greatest good, or the actions that promote a large amount of good for smaller amounts of people, right? The so-called, quote, job creators. This is the big one that this election is going to battle over. So, you know, we just have to take, when it all everything gets all riled up and fired up, but when all trickles back down, to me, it's responsibility, taking personal responsibility. I'm going to define myself. I'm not going to be defined by somebody else. I'm going to do the things that explore the things as an artist, as a creative person, that I feel are responsible to explore, and, you know, let the chips go fall where they may, and try to pass that idea on to somebody else who's willing to listen.
And that's the beauty of what I gathered from when I took the class and when I came in here, because that was your very message to us in this class, that we had the ability to be able to project whatever that message was, whether it be comedy, entertainment, or be it political, educational, social, whatever that message is. And I believe that you're doing a great job in helping us realize the real potential of our own success by utilizing the very thing that used to put us in this box. I used the statement that it took a stick to make us, and it'll probably take a stick to unmake us. But now the great thing about it, we've got the stick now.
Well, you know, I think as a teacher, and I had some great teachers. I had a couple of really, really great teachers that I still look to in times of stress. But it's the responsibility of a teacher to project for their students the idea that the students can do better than they think they can, right? That they don't have to settle for underachievement, that they don't have to settle for being less than. And that's what I learned, and that's what I try to project, because, you know, I just think, wow, if a person can realize their full potential, right? It's overwhelming what people can do when they know that they can do it. And this educational system, this is why it always comes back to this. It is very clear that in our present educational system, something happens to young children, particularly boys, and particularly black boys and Latin boys, around the age of 4, 5, 6. Something kind of message, some message that they're getting is telling them that this is not for them, right? This is not for you, right? Go do something else. This is communicated in ways that are obvious and also not so obvious. And so these kids start feeling that it is not for them, right? And they're smart. It's not that they can't do it, but they're told that it's not for them to do. So how do you get that message? How do we go against that message? How do we work against that?
On that
That's
note,
what we'll talk about next time.
we're going to come back, and that's what we're going to see how quickly that hour went by.
Yeah.
I thank you so very much for
right.
coming on the show, and that message is so dynamic. But we're going to come back, and we're going to go back at that question as well.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. It's my pleasure. Keep doing the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. My name is James Young. I will see you next week. Be blessed, and remember, it's always a new day.